This episode is brought to you by the latest biohacking tool, which has made me much more productive and focused. It's called Magic Mind, and I'll tell you more about it later in this episode. For now, let's get started.
Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business, write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Caesar Abaid.
Learn from the experts, think outside the box, have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Well, hello everyone and welcome. I'm Caesar Abaid, your host, and this show is your regular reminder that your career matters more than your job and that your life is a project and you are the manager. Whether you work for a company or just for yourself, your job stability is really just your ability to land your next gig. So join me in practicing intentional, planned, and value-adding relevance, starting right now. Today, my friends, is a special episode, and this might be one of the most authentic episodes of the show you will ever get. So the story is I wanted to bring you the topic of coaching because working with a coach has helped me so much in my career. And so I went ahead and I approached my professional coach, the amazing Lara Hogan, to see if she would be interested in being interviewed. And not only was she interested, but we decided to, besides introducing the topic of coaching and explaining what it is, we decided to record a mini coaching session between her and myself. So this is going to get very personal today, so stay tuned. And so let me start by introducing you to my amazing coach, Lara Hogan. Lara Hogan is an author, public speaker, and coach for managers and leaders across the tech industry. As a founder of Wherewithal, Lara and her team run workshops, roundtables, and trainings on core management skills like delivering great feedback and setting clear expectations. Before Wherewithal, Lara spent a decade growing emerging leaders as the VP of Engineering at Kickstarter and an engineering director at Etsy. She champions management as a practice, building fast websites, and celebrating your achievements with donuts, and sometimes sushi. Her latest book, Resilient Management, is here to help those who find themselves responsible for supporting a team of people. Hello, Lara. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's so great to have you in a different context because, as I just let everybody know, you happen to be my coach. And we were usually talking about work and different things. And so thank you for making the time and for being here. And can you introduce your awesomeness to my audience?
I am genuinely excited to be here. I feel like, going on podcasts and talking to folks, most of the time I don't know them, so it's like really refreshing to be able to chat with someone who, knows me, but also I know them. I'm really excited.
That's great. That's great. So I've been meaning to have an episode on coaching for a long time because I've seen the benefits. I've been working with coaches for, I don't even know, like 3-4 years, maybe longer now. And it has really made a difference in not only my career, my job, but my life and the way I look at things. It's always so helpful to have a thought partner, for the big things. And I think for most folks in my audience right now, they're project managers. They are just, in that hurry of getting things done and budgets and things like that. And this might not be something they're thinking about that, hey, being able to think and parse things and break things up and having a partner to do that is a benefit that's available. And especially now with the internet, right? You can do it online.
But totally. It's, we get, like you said, we get caught up in like the everyday work stuff. And at least for me, I found it hard to envision what actually coaching does, because it's like, all right, I'm just talking to somebody. It's like work therapy, what on earth, how could that make my life easier? Or, it feels like the benefits will be intangible, but really until I found, at least until you start working with a coach, it's hard to know the ways that things will be like unlocked for you by it. At least, again, I'm biased here, but I definitely, having worked with coaches myself, really, really recognize that, like you said, having a thought partner, having a person to gut check you, have a person to give you feedback, have someone to help you brainstorm. It's really nice, but I don't know about you, but for me, having a coach gives me that space to just think about, like permission to think about things when everything else is go, go, go. It's hard to remember. There's a lot of value in having some downtime, like 45 minutes or an hour dedicated to just like processing
Right.
what you want to work on or what you want to do or what's important or any of those things.
Yeah. And I think it used to be easier. You know, I think of my grandparents. I always think of both my grandfathers. You know, one was an accountant, the other one was worked for the bank, and they were deep thinkers. You know, they had that bandwidth to write poetry and paint, and I think because I don't know, it's modern world and social media where we go through life in little spurts of energy, right? Yeah. And to be able to take those 45 minutes to an hour to actually think deeply about something is really unusual all of a sudden.
Truly. And like our whole jobs are about, you know, as knowledge workers, we're there to like solve problems. And frankly, like your grandparents were solving problems too, right? But there's something that I'm noticing, especially because I coach mostly folks in the tech world, where we're so focused on solving the problem, we often don't take a minute to make sure that we're solving the right problem or why this particular problem feels so sticky or ambiguous, or, you know, there's so much like underneath the surface that we don't get to spend time with. And when we do spend that time kind of sifting through our feelings about a thing or why this one feels so challenging when otherwise it wouldn't, or, you know, whatever it is, until we spend that time, we're just going to keep on getting stuck in the same ruts. And it's hard to remember that we need that space. We need that time. And sometimes we need like a buddy to help us kind of, my friend describes it as a coach's responsibility to sit on the carpet with you and like sift through Lego together. You know, that's what it feels like. And I think that there's like so much, you know, joy in that, but also just like, we never give ourselves that time to have that joy.
That's a great analogy. I love analogies. That's
I love
a great
it too, yeah.
Okay, so I thought today, rather than just talking about this, we could start with some definitions and then we do an actual coaching session so folks can have an idea and an insight into what it's like. And so we'll be talking about me and the podcast, right? Awesome. And I don't know where this is going. So if you're listening right now, you're on the same roller coaster as I am. So fasten your seatbelts. We don't know. We might just, who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
But okay, so first of all, I think everybody who's listening has had a teacher in their life and maybe a mentor. Let's say they were an intern at some point and they had somebody helping them, or even as they start a new job, they're assigned a mentor within the company. What is the difference between coaching and mentoring / teaching?
Yeah, this is like the question of the day. I find when people get started with coaching, they're expecting mentorship, and these are two very different skill sets, but in common language in society, we conflate these two terms to kind of mean the same thing, but they're really, really different. So mentorship is about sharing advice and sharing your perspective, sharing things that, you know, when you're the mentor, you're sharing experiences you've had, you're sharing pitfalls you think this person should avoid, suggesting some things that they could try. So when we're looking for help, we often look for mentors. We look for people who have more experience than we do on whatever thing it is that we're talking about. And we ask them for their advice, which is totally normal. Like it makes a lot of sense that we've been thinking about it that way. But there's a ton of research out there about this. And what we know is that mentorship doesn't help people grow. It helps people get onboarded. It helps people get unblocked, but it doesn't help people grow. Coaching really is the skill set that we should be using to help people connect their own dots, develop the new brain wrinkles. And what's weird about coaching is it's not at all about the coach. It's about the person who's being coached. Where in mentorship, it's all about the mentor and their perspective. So coaching kind of flips the whole thing on its head. And it can feel really hard to kind of try to switch into a coaching mode for people who are not practiced with it, because we've been taught that the best way for us to help people is to share our advice and share our knowledge. And it knocks people back when they realize that maybe that's not the thing that I can give that's the most valuable to the person I'm talking to who has the challenge, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's with coaching, it's almost like I don't come out of it with new information almost. It's stuff that was in me already that I needed help and seeing, right? It's like it's like
my whole philosophy. Oh, sorry.
No, but
My whole philosophy about it is that I believe that you already have the answers inside yourself. It's just my job to help you find those answers. Like this is not very rarely, like when we have a normal coaching session, am I like, oh, here's a framework or here's a link. I'll do that once in a while, but the vast majority of the time I'm just asking you coaching questions that look like open-ended questions that usually start with the word what. In coach training, they teach you to not ask why questions, because why tends to make people feel judged, and that's not the vibe that we're going for in coaching. And they also teach us to avoid how questions, because how is in problem solving mode, and before we are able to tackle the problem, we need to figure out what on earth the problem is. Are we looking at the actual problem? What's the question behind the question, right? Like you're a smart person. You've been trying to, address this problem already, but there's something in the way. We should explore that and figure out all the different sides of it before we get to solution mode.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And it's funny, you may find folks listening right now, like if, I see that with my children sometimes, I see like, you know what to do here. They come to me with a question, right? Like, and I know that they can do whatever they're asking me to do for them. And it's similar in that way. Like by asking some questions to help them see the light. Okay, well, this is. Oh, I can do this. I've done this before. And asking the right questions here and there, and kind of they find their way.
100%. And like you totally could open that jar for them. Yeah. Right. But you know that if you keep on doing that, they're not going to learn how to do it themselves. Right. And that's why that difference between mentorship and coaching is so important. In coaching, you want somebody to build their own muscles, their own brain muscles in this case. But it's way more helpful long-term for people than just giving them advice, and we're doing it for them.
Okay, so before we get into the actual coaching part of today's conversation, which I'm pumped about, I'd like to take a second here and talk about Magic Mind, which is my new favorite product and also a sponsor for today's episode. Magic Mind is a little 2-ounce bottle of liquid magic, that's what I call it, that I've been taking every day in the morning to help me be more productive. So I'm sure you're familiar with energy drinks, and this is not an energy drink, but instead it's full of all natural ingredients such as adaptogens, nootropics, and matcha, which will help decrease stress for you, boost blood flow and cognition. And my favorite, it helps me keep focused because I'm naturally very distracted and scatterbrained. This has helped me tremendously. So I take Magic Mind as part of my morning routine right before I get started with work. So my day typically starts around 7 a.m. That's when I wake up, and then I will get up and make breakfast for the family. And then we do some morning prayers with the kids. And then I have a shower, drink my Magic Mind, and I get started at work. And usually in about 15, 30 minutes, right after I'm caught up reading my emails from the day and before I start getting into the zone, that's when I'm able to tackle the tasks that require the most focus without much distraction. And I try to front load my day with those tasks, and Magic Mind has helped me do that. And it helps me avoid procrastination as well. So it's a great little product, and they're offering my audience a 20% discount. So all you have to do is to go to magicmind.co/PMP. Again, magicmind.co/PMP. And use the code PMP at checkout for 20% off your purchase. Again, magicmind.co/PMP. And the code is PMP, and you get 20% off. So I'll have links to Magic Mind and this discount code in the show notes for today's episode. Thank you, Magic Mind, for supporting the PM for the Masses podcast. Now, let's go back to Lara Hogan and coaching. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So maybe we can make this real for folks right now. So,
yes.
So
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So when you and I talked about this episode and what to talk about, I had this thought. Maybe we can talk about the podcast. Podcast is a big part of my life, and it never comes up in our conversations because it's not really related to my job. It's something I do on the side. It's like a hobby, but it does take time. It takes energy. It takes me away from my family to do this. This is my lunchtime right now, so I'm not. It's in the middle of a work day, and so it is not something that I can just snap my fingers and have it done. So it takes effort, and I've been doing this for 12 years now, on and off. And there were periods of my life when I could do this every week, and then there are other times when it'd be like months. And now I'm at the place where I share an episode when I have something to talk about or I have an interesting conversation. But I read a book recently that really changed my life, and it's called the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it comes from a Christian perspective, but basically it's like we are distracting our lives away. We're distracting ourselves by doing too many things. I'm not doing justice. The book is really good, but
cool.
It made me think about everything you say yes to requires time and effort, sometimes money, and you have to say no to something else, right? So the example he uses in the book is like, I want to buy a motorcycle, which is great. Right? First of all, it costs money, so you need to think about that. But then you'll have to make time to ride it, right? And do it safely, and have to wait for the right weather to do it, which could be the right weather for another activity that you want to do with your friends. So even something as fun as having a motorcycle costs more than the price tag. So made me think about all the things that I do on the side, including the podcast, and is this something that I should be still doing? Right? When, I have 3 children, I have a demanding job. I'm not near retirement. There's still a career path for me to continue to grow there, which requires effort. And so I often think about that, but at the same time, I enjoy doing this. So I feel conflict. And the other thing they always say about podcasts, you need to be consistent with your, with the episodes. Do it every week or do it every 2 weeks. And I'm not, which hurts my rankings. Let's put it this way, right? So every once in a while, I feel like almost like a guilt. Like I should put out more episodes and do this right. Or maybe I shouldn't do this at all, right?
It's a lot of shoulds.
Right.
You said should like 14 times there. I'm really curious. You were talking about cost. It sounds like the podcast is a motorcycle for you. So not just what's the cost of the podcast, but maybe what's the benefit? Like for motorcycle riding, you might say, I get these things out of it. What about the podcast?
Yes. So the benefit, early on I thought, this is going to be a side job and I'm going to make some money from it. And at first when I started it was not that at all. It was like a marketing attempt when I was working in the family business. It was a different show. It wasn't this show. It was a construction industry podcast. And so I just wanted to get the word out about what we were doing. And then when I started PM for the Masses, which is this one, okay, this is the topic I really care about. And I'm going to, I was really like keen to bring this message to the world. I went and I wrote a book about this. But then over time, this changed because I started to get feedback from folks, like just today, I got a message on LinkedIn from a listener in Brazil who saw a comment I left on LinkedIn because my high school, it was a historical building there in Brazil, and it was closed down for 8 years. And we were wondering, are they going to tear it down or whatever? But no, they revamped it and they just reopened the building, and the school came back to the building, and my heart just exploded because it's. Wow. And so he saw that I commented there, and he went to the same school, which is super odd because it's not a big school not in huge city either. And hey, I love the podcast. We went to the same school. I get a lot of benefit from what you do, and I get messages from folks from like Africa and India, and hey, I'm a new mom, and I had to take maternity leave, and I needed to listen to something while I pushed the stroller down the street because COVID, whatever, right? And I'm listening to you, and I'm excited to go back to work and do these things, and I get a lot of benefit from that. Fulfillment, I guess, is the word.
Because you're helping people.
I'm helping people. So that is one. The other one is like I enjoy doing it. I think I have an artistic aspect to my personality that I never really had a chance to exercise growing up because life was kind of tough. So I never, really had a chance to learn music and theater and I enjoyed all those things. And I find that this is like, here I'm kind of a radio star, right? I have my own show. I get to do whatever I want and be creative. So it's an outlet for my creativity. Wow. It's cool to tell people that I do this because people are interested. It's a topic of conversation. The other thing is I became known in this industry of project management as a thought leader, even though I'm just interviewing people. If you Google my name, that everything is project management there and the podcast. And then there are other things that come from this, which is like some networking. The job that I have right now came about because I met another podcaster years ago who eventually got a job with this company. So when it was my turn to find a job, I reached out, hey, tell me about this. So, doors are open because of it.
Yeah.
So those are off the top of my head, those are some of the benefits.
That's so many.
Right.
And like big ones, right? Like you talked about things that bring you joy. This brings you joy. You talked about how fulfilling it is. You talked about the professional gains from networking and from that sense of significance, being a thought leader because of it. Like I'm hearing a lot of benefits and I'm wondering what that book says about the benefits. Because you shared, it talks about the costs of things, but what does it say about benefits?
Yeah, I mean, the point is like we should focus on things that have a lot. I guess I'm answering my own question. It's okay to say yes to things, but understand that they have a cost, and then you need to understand the benefit and see if they match, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think in this case, it would make sense to keep doing it, right? Mm-hmm. But should I keep doing it another should, right?
Yeah.
In a way that is, should I lean into this more?
Right.
Because
should you turn up the dial?
Yeah, because I do care a lot about the podcast, and so I keep putting the effort into it. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like if there's like 2-3 months without an episode, folks might think that I gave up or that I don't care.
Totally.
And there are a few people who really, really look forward to the episodes, right? And I almost feel like I'm letting them down if I don't do it more often. So there's maybe a little bit of guilt there for not leaning into it.
That's really interesting for me to hear, because knowing you, I know how much you care about helping people, and I know that this podcast brings you joy, and I know that those folks are delighted whenever they see a new episode pop up, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering where this guilt feeling, like, where's that coming from?
Maybe it's from looking at other shows that do have an episode every week, and folks who do this full time, and they, right? And I don't want to do this full time. I've made this decision a while.
Costs would be too high.
So maybe it's just me comparing myself to other people that I shouldn't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which humans we do. That's how we roll, right? We look around and we say, "Ooh, should I be doing it that way? It looks like that's working for them." Or it looks like every other podcast is doing it weekly or monthly or whatever. They've got a cadence they stick to. And I'm not doing it that way. Should I do it that way? And I'm a huge fan of trying to eliminate as many shoulds as possible from our language, because really it's not about what works for other people. It's exclusively about what works for you. Mm-hmm. And running a cost benefit analysis that you just did so far, it sounds like this is working for you at this cadence. There's still costs, like the feelings of guilt and, some of the like shoulds that pop up, those are costs. But it sounds like you've actually found a way to make this work for you.
Yeah, it does work. I think the question I have from time to time is, which I'm answering myself, I guess, because you often hear if something's worth doing is worth doing well, right? And I feel like I could do it better. I could do better, right? And I don't know. Could.
Do you? Yeah. So with that, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Well is subjective, right? Mm-hmm. As an outsider listening to you to speak about this, it sounds like you're doing this well for you, right? You're doing this in a way that works for you and brings you tons of joy and tons of fulfillment. Doing things well, it might look different to somebody else. Doing things well for someone for whom this is a full-time gig, doing it well looks like making sure that they have a sustainable income. And that means, releasing episodes weekly or bi-weekly or whatever, but that's not what it doesn't sound like that's what well looks like. Doing it well looks like for you.
Yeah. And I've done that before when I was doing this every week, and it becomes, okay, I need to do an episode this week. And it becomes like, okay, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to have on? As opposed to me having something to share and then deciding to share. So it was a question of what's the motivation, right?
Yeah. And what are you getting out of it? What's the cost too?
Right. Because if I do it every week, then I need to be better at scheduling, and I need to set a time to record these. When I know a guy who does an episode every day, and he's been doing that for I don't know how many years. Yeah. John Lee Dumas, that guy, and it's a whole thing. It became his whole life, right? He records back to back these episodes, and that's his whole life. And I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that.
No.
So
it wouldn't work for you. It wouldn't work. Again, the cost benefit analysis would not play out for you the same way it works for that person.
Right.
If I were to give you permission to do anything relating to the podcast, what would you want permission to do?
I guess permission to continue to pursue it as a personal fulfillment project.
Yeah.
As opposed to, hey, I'm going to make tons of money from this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Because as it is, I do have sponsors and it's great. And, there's some costs associated with the podcast, the nice microphone that I have and the equipment and the hosting and all that. And that kind of takes care of itself with sponsorships and things like that. But I'm not going to be rich from this,
Yep.
So that even at the level that I'm doing this, with the frequency that I'm doing it, is enough to pay for itself, right? So it's even that benefit is coming in. Mm-hmm. So maybe this is it. I should just stay the course, stay in my lane.
I mean, it sounds great. It sounds perfect for what you want to get out of it. Mm-hmm. Personally, as an outsider, you already have permission to keep on going. Yeah. It sounds like it's really working. And I think that a lot of people listening will hear some relief. And also you just demonstrating that it doesn't have to be a one size fits all approach. What works for somebody else may not work for them. And that's totally okay.
Okay. All right. So this is great. So basically what I'm getting out of this right now is that I'm maybe just by inertia, right? I kind of found this happy happy place where I can do this when I have the time, when I feel like I have something to share. And it kind of works because I do have an audience, and I have sponsors, and I have, I'm still getting the benefit of connecting and helping people. But maybe I should, I'm saying should, but maybe there's an opportunity for me to enjoy that as it is without
revel in it. You're getting so much out of it. And I think, this time spent triple checking to make sure that it's still working for you is really worthwhile. But the math checks out. It's working. And that's, as your coach, I get to say, like, that sounds great. And I want to support you doing that.
Great. Cool. So this is where I'd be writing notes, right? And
what notes would you be writing?
Well, because typically I would come into a coaching session with you with notes, right? Before we even start. Okay, these are some of the things I'd like to talk about. And then I would write things down as we discuss things. And so this would be a situation, for example, that I would and this is a pause from coaching here, so I'm just sharing with the audience, totally. Right, what I would do. I would probably write down what does this mean, right? So I need to, there's an opportunity for me to appreciate what's going on, what's happening, and the fact that it works for me, and maybe redirect my thoughts of anxiety or insecurity into thankfulness, or maybe leaning into connecting with some of these folks that reach out to me in a deeper level, instead of saying, thanks for listening, but maybe thanks for listening. What do you like about the podcast? What would you like to hear more about? And how's that job going for you? I know you got a new job.
I love to hear from you.
Yeah. Which I used to do a lot more, and then over time it just became too much because I was doing it every week. And, maybe now that I don't, and I potentially have a bit more margin, I could connect with folks on a deeper level.
For sure. Yeah. I just think about the people listening, like the mom you described with the stroller, listening to an episode like this one, talking about wrestling with like what's right for you versus what's right for others, and just feeling like they can see themselves in what you're describing. And like that is also another form of leadership, like modeling the different ways to be a leader and modeling the different ways to do different kinds of work, because we need to have a diversity of, we're all different weirdos in our own way. And so we need to kind of, there's always an archetype, right? Like you described a person who records daily. And I think it's really powerful to have different models of different kinds of ways to approach the same work.
Right. While at the same time, understanding that might not work for you. It might not be the right approach for you.
Totally. Yeah.
Amazing. So that's very helpful. Thank you. And I hope that, like I said, I didn't know where this was going to go. It could have gone the other way. It's like, okay, I need to stop doing this,
If I were to assign you homework, which sometimes I do at the end of our coaching sessions together, I'd probably offer an idea like, if when these feelings of like worry or anxiety come up about, should I keep on doing this? What can we do to remind you? What can you do to remind yourself that this is right. You're good.
Yeah. I think I just need to bring it into, because I do have a daily routine of introspection. It's not very long, like 5 minutes. I have these, what are they? I have it on Text Expander here. How can today be productive? What's the most important thing today? What am I grateful for today? What's on my mind? And then at the end of the day, what did I do today? Right.
Nice.
So, and often I'm not thinking about the podcast. Maybe I should put that into my daily mindfulness / meditation topics, so I can put it in perspective. So I think the cycle is I will put out an episode and yay, that's published. And then I get busy with other things. And then it's like 2, 3, 4 weeks later, somebody sends me a message about the podcast, where I was like, oh, wow, yeah, I need an episode, But maybe if I were thinking about this every day, even if it's just a little bit, I would be able to be at peace, right? Whenever I do get a question or two about, hey, when's the next episode? It's not catching me by surprise. It's something I've been thinking about.
Yeah. And so it's just a benefit. It's not a cost whenever you get those messages.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah. So I hope that, for those listening right now, this has been interesting. I chose this topic because it's a topic that you listening right now and myself, we both care about, because you're listening. Obviously, you're enjoying this, and it's my show. So of course I care about this. So I chose this topic on purpose, and hopefully you're trying to see how this would work for you in your own circumstance and situation, and see whether or not coaching would be helpful to you to unpack these questions you might have about your career, about your job, or whatever else you're doing. So, Lara, let's say somebody's listening right now and they're super interesting. It's like, oh man, I need that. I need to have that. Maybe where should they go to learn more about coaching? Do you have a resource, or can you point us into a link or a book or something that would talk more about this?
Definitely. There's a ton of great books out there about coaching specifically. If folks are managers or leaders and they're trying to think about how they can provide this kind of resource to the people around them at work. The first chapter of my book, Resilient Management, which is published for free on abookapart.com, does go into the differences between mentoring and coaching. And I also have a little free resource of 20 great open coaching questions that you should feel free to steal liberally from whenever you're working on building some of those coaching skills.
Cool. And I also think that some folks listening to this might be thinking, I would like to be a coach. I have those thoughts sometimes. So what are some thoughts there? Yeah.
I recommend that folks thinking about getting into coaching talk to people who are coaches and ask them where they learned how to do it. There's so many different coaching programs out there. I actually do not recommend the one that I went through, but there's definitely a lot of different resources out there for learning how to coach. So find someone that you know who's a coach. A lot of people, especially in the tech industry, are exploring this themselves. So figure out what programs they went through, what were their feelings about it, what did they get out of it, and see if you can gather some data on which program or process might work best for them.
Awesome. And finally, for you, if people want to learn more about you, all the things that you do, where should they go?
Yeah, head over to larahogan.me and they can check out some of the free tools and resources I've got over there. Okay.
And as always, I'll have links to all these on the show notes for today's episode at pmforthemasses.com. I don't know what the number is at this point, but if you go to pmforthemasses.com, you'll see because I'm not doing it every week. I lost count. But pmforthemasses.com, find the episode there. And I'd like to hear from you too. Like if you do find the show notes, there's always a comment box at the bottom. Tell me what you thought about this and if it applies to you, and let's connect over there. So pmforthemasses.com and the comment box. Lara, thank you so much. You're awesome.
Truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
pmforthemasses.com